February 2025. Remember when we thought things couldn't get any weirder? Yeah, me neither. But then, like a bad Bollywood sequel, tariffs reared their ugly heads again. Trump, wielding the IEPA like a rusty butter knife, slapped a 25% tariff on Mexican goods. Yes, 25%. Apparently someone told him Mexico was hiding the good guacamole. Energy exports? Those got hit even harder, because nothing says America first like more expensive electricity, right? This wasn't just some off-the-cuff tweet storm either. This was a full-blown trade war 2.0, and this time everyone was invited. Canada, the usually polite neighbor, got hit with a 10% tariff just for good measure. Even Canadian oil, usually as welcome as a winning lottery ticket, wasn't spared. The message was clear. When it comes to trade, Trump's love language is chaos. The automotive industry, already grappling with supply chain woes and the rise of electric vehicles, found itself caught in the crosshairs. Imagine their surprise. It's like going for a biryani and finding a samosa in it, not necessarily bad, just unexpected. Car makers, facing a looming April 2nd deadline, went into overdrive. Shipments to the US were rushed, borders resembled parking lots, and logistics managers considered new career paths like professional hide-and-seek champions. BMW, known for its sleek German engineering, suddenly found its Mexican-made 3 Series slapped with a 27.5% tariff. Audi's Q5 SUV, assembled south of the border, faced the same fate. Suddenly made in Mexico wasn't so appealing anymore. Car makers, caught between a rock and a hard place, started whispering about moving production. The irony? The very jobs Trump claimed to be protecting were now at risk. The tremors from Trump's tariff tantrum were felt far beyond factory floors and car dealerships. The ripple effects of the trade war echoed through every corner of the economy, causing disruptions that were both immediate and far-reaching. Factories halted production lines, car dealerships saw their lots empty out, and businessmen everywhere were left scratching their heads, wondering how to navigate this new, uncertain landscape. Wall Street, never one to miss a good panic attack, went into full-blown meltdown mode. The stock exchange floor was a scene of chaos, with traders reacting frantically to the plummeting numbers. It was as if the very foundation of the financial world was shaking, and no one knew where the bottom was. The US dollar, usually as strong as a wrestler on Diwali sweets, took a 4% nosedive against major currencies. This sudden drop sent shockwaves through the global financial system, affecting everything from import prices to international travel costs. It was a stark reminder of how interconnected our world has become. It was like watching your favorite uncle try to breakdance at a wedding, entertaining, but ultimately concerning. The spectacle drew a crowd, but the underlying worry was palpable. People couldn't help but wonder what the long-term consequences would be, both for their personal finances and the broader economy. The S&P 500, that barometer of American corporate health, plunged nearly 4%. This sharp decline was a clear signal that investors were losing confidence. The stress was visible on the faces of traders who were glued to their monitors, trying to make sense of the rapidly changing landscape. Investment banks, those bastions of financial wisdom, were left scrambling, their carefully crafted strategies now as useful as an umbrella in a hurricane. Meetings that were once calm and calculated turned into frantic sessions of damage control. Financial analysts who prided themselves on their predictive prowess found themselves in uncharted territory. The message from the markets was clear: trade wars are bad for business. The red numbers on the stock market boards were a stark visual representation of the economic pain being felt. Business news headlines screamed about the impact, and traders on the floor couldn't hide their negative reactions. Who knew, right? It's almost like starting a food fight in a crowded restaurant. Messy, disruptive, and everyone ends up with Dal on their shirt. The chaos leaves everyone scrambling to clean up, but the mess lingers, a reminder of the disruption caused. In the end, it's clear that no one wins in a trade war, and the fallout can be felt far and wide. Mexico, facing a bully on its doorstep, chose a more diplomatic approach. It's like that time your grandma calmly sipped her chai while your uncle argued about politics, a masterclass in composure. On March 6, 2025, they managed to buy some time. The U.S. agreed to delay those pesky USMCA tariffs until April 2nd. It wasn't a solution, more like hitting the snooze button on a very loud alarm clock. But Mexico wasn't just stalling for time. They knew they had to address Trump's concerns about fentanyl trafficking. They ramped up border security, cracked down on drug cartels, and even offered to share intelligence. It was a delicate balancing act. appeasing a volatile leader while protecting their own sovereignty. Section 5. Amazing standoff. GM corn and glyphosate fuel agricultural tensions. As if tariffs weren't enough, the US and Mexico also found themselves embroiled in a heated debate about, wait for it, corn. Specifically, genetically modified corn. This isn't just any corn, it's corn that's been scientifically altered to resist pests and herbicides, making it a staple in modern agriculture. But not everyone is on board with this scientific marvel. Now, I'm no farmer, but this seems like arguing over which samosa is better at a buffet. Imagine a room full of people, each with their own favorite dish, passionately debating which one reigns supreme. It's a culinary standoff, but with much higher stakes. There's plenty to go around, people. The fields are lush, the harvests are bountiful, and yet, the debate rages on. You see, back in 2020, Mexico decided to ban GM corn for human consumption. This decision was rooted in concerns over health and environmental impacts, sparking a wave of controversy. They were cool with using it for animal feed, though. The livestock didn't seem to mind, munching away happily on their genetically modified meals. But apparently Mexican stomachs are discerning. The idea of GM corn on their dinner plates didn't sit well with many consumers who preferred their traditional, non-GM varieties. This didn't sit well with the US, who saw it as a barrier to trade. American farmers, who had heavily invested in GM corn, felt the sting of this decision. Add to that Mexico's ban on glyphosate, a common herbicide, and the plot thickens. Glyphosate is widely used in the US, and its ban added another layer of complexity to the already tense situation. And you had a full-blown agricultural standoff. USMCA consultations were launched, with both sides trying to find a middle ground. But finding common ground was proving as difficult as finding a decent cup of chai in a Western cafe. The negotiations were tough, with each side holding firm to their positions, making it a challenging path to resolution. Section 6. Global Trade, Quake Ripple Effects, and Retaliatory Strikes. The global trade landscape was about to be shaken to its core, with ripple effects that would be felt far and wide. The trade war, like a Bollywood dance number, wasn't confined to just the US and Mexico. It was a complex choreography involving multiple nations, each with its own set of moves and countermoves. Oh no, this was a global affair. Countries from every corner of the world found themselves entangled in this economic showdown, each trying to protect their interests while navigating the turbulent waters of international trade. China, never one to miss a chance to throw shade, retaliated with tariffs on US goods. This move was not just a simple tit-for-tat, it was a calculated strategy to hit the US where it hurt the most, targeting key industries and products. The EU, usually a beacon of diplomacy, announced a whopping $28 billion in retaliatory measures. This was a clear signal that even the most diplomatic of nations were ready to play hardball when their economic interests were at stake. It was like watching your family WhatsApp group explode after someone shared a controversial political meme. The arguments were heated, the stakes were high, and everyone had an opinion on what should be done next. Canada, still reeling from the initial tariff shock, imposed its own tariffs on $20.6 billion worth of US imports. This was a significant move for a country that often finds itself in the shadow of its southern neighbor. Even the UK, usually joined at the hip with the US, felt the heat. The special relationship between the two nations was put to the test as the UK had to navigate its own economic challenges while dealing with the fallout from the trade war. The OECD, that group of economists who always seem to know when the party's over, predicted economic pain for everyone involved. Their forecasts were grim, warning of slowed growth, increased unemployment, and a general sense of economic uncertainty. Trade wars, it turns out, are like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube by smashing it with a hammer, messy, ineffective, and ultimately pointless. The global economy is a delicate puzzle, and brute force solutions only serve to create more problems than they solve. Section 7. The high cost of protectionism, economic pain on both sides of the border. Here's the thing about trade wars. They're like that awkward family reunion where everyone argues about politics after one too many gulab jamuns. Nobody wins. The US, despite Trump's promises, saw its own economy take a hit. Manufacturing slowed down, prices went up, and consumers felt the pinch. It's like trying to eat biryani with one hand tied behind your back, messy, frustrating, and ultimately unsatisfying. Mexico, facing the brunt of the tariffs, saw its economy suffer too. Jobs were lost, businesses struggled, and the peso took a tumble. It was a stark reminder that in the interconnected world of global trade, when one country sneezes, everyone catches a cold. Section 8. Beyond the bottom line, the erosion of trust and cooperation. But the real cost of this trade war wasn't just measured in dollars and pesos. It was the erosion of trust, the breakdown of cooperation, and the rise of uncertainty. Remember when the US and Mexico were working together on issues like immigration and drug trafficking? Yeah, those were the good old days. Now, instead of working together to solve common problems, both countries were retreating into their corners, suspicious and wary. It was like watching a game of kabaddi where everyone's on the same side, but they're too busy fighting each other to actually win. Section 9. Charting a new course. The urgent need for dialogue and economic vision. So, what's the solution? Well, it's definitely not more tariffs. That's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline, spectacular, but ultimately counterproductive. What we need is a return to dialogue, a commitment to cooperation, and a healthy dose of economic foresight. It's time to stop treating trade like a zero-sum game, where one country's gain is another's loss. We need to start thinking about trade as a way to build bridges, not walls. It's time to recognize that our economies are intertwined, and that we're all in this together. After all, in the grand tapestry of global trade, we're all just threads in the same colorful fabric, and ripping that fabric apart helps absolutely no one.